Hello, I'm not a Bitcoin pioneer, although I wish I was.
Are you the interviewer?
I'm the interviewer. My name's Andrew Tyler. I'm a Bitcoin enthusiast. I'm also a blockchain consultant. I'm going to introduce James because he is a bit of a pioneer in the space. Oh, nice picture of me up on the screen. Please do. I've actually got my own blockchain startup, and I would love you all to just join our Telegram group. So if you're on Telegram, join in. But I'm about to interview a Bitcoin pioneer. James Howells. Has anyone heard of James Howells? Put your hand up if you... Okay, yeah, a few people who probably came in just to see the legend himself. Stop laughing. James Howells is a Bitcoin pioneer, and he was actually one of the first people to start mining Bitcoin. And I'm going to leave it at that. So if we can have a round of applause for James. Okay, so this is going to be a bit of a interview question. I'm going to sit down. A bit of a question and answer session between myself and James. I think we'll open that at the end to the crowd for everyone to ask questions. Is that on?
Hello?
Okay, fantastic. So I've just introduced James. I said he's a Bitcoin pioneer, and he's known as one of the first Bitcoin miners. But he had a little bit of an incident in regards to losing some of his Bitcoin, and I think I'm going to let you take the story from there, James.
Yeah, okay. So I was involved in Bitcoin very early on. I came across the financial crisis at the end of 2008. I didn't believe what I was being told on the television. So I basically went online and I found out myself how money works in the real world. And I didn't like what I found. So I came across Bitcoin and I was instantly hooked. Early 2009, I began mining Bitcoin. I was one of the first 6 or 7 people in the world to start running Bitcoin. When I first ran the client, I couldn't actually connect to more than 6 or 7 nodes at a time, which means there were no other nodes to connect to. What this also means is that I was actually mining directly connected to the creator of Bitcoin, which was Satoshi. Obviously, I couldn't connect to any more nodes than the standard 8. And he was mining since day one. So I mined for a few weeks. I managed to get over 7,500 coins, currently valued at over $85 million. Yeah, I had a bit of an incident where an ex-girlfriend of mine complained about the fan noise of my gaming laptop at the time. I hold her responsible for not having $100 million right now, but I'll let that go. Yeah, so I stopped mining, forgot about Bitcoin for a few years, and I kept the hard drive that I'd used in my laptop to mine those coins. Kept that hard drive in a drawer, and mistakenly in 2013, the wrong hard drive was thrown out during a clear out. There were 2 drives in the drawer. One was a blank 20 gigabyte drive. Another one was a certain gigabyte drive with a private key on it. I bet it's happened many times up and down the country. The wrong one was put in the bin. So yeah, I mean, that's my landfill story. That's my early Bitcoin mining story. The local council have tried many times to get it back, to get permission to actually dig, because I still believe that the data will be on the hard drive. I'm not sure if many of you remember the space shuttle Columbia crashed through the atmosphere, landed in the ocean, sank to the bottom. NASA managed to recover 99.9% of the data from those drives. Which basically shows that it's very hard to remove data from a hard drive. So I'm in the process now of trying to convince my local council to allow me to search that landfill. I've had some funding offers from Germany, Switzerland, the US. That isn't the issue. However, the issue I've got is that the local environment agency do not want to play ball. My only hope at the moment is Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash keeps going up, which I believe it will do, to the point where the local council cannot say no anymore. it will be worth too much. I've offered them a 10% cut to allow me to search. But yeah, that's where I'm at the moment. I'm trying to convince the local council to allow me to search for my lost fortune.
So that's quite a tragic story there. We all heard about the guy who bought some pizza for Bitcoin, but you've actually lost Bitcoin that you worked for, which I can imagine must be really hard. Can you tell us, in the time that you were mining, those really early days, what kind of rewards were you looking at for doing a bit of mining? How much could you make in Bitcoin?
My machine wasn't mining constantly every day as you do today. My laptop at the time was my personal computer. It was my gaming laptop, my internet laptop, my Facebook, so it was only mining during the night times when I wasn't using it. If I knew then what I know now, that machine and many others would have continuously been mining Bitcoin. Obviously, I would have set up a different facility other than in my home, which wouldn't have raised complaints from an ex-girlfriend about the noise of my fans.
You can't keep blaming the girlfriend.
At the end of the day, I probably would still be involved,
So how much are we talking about then on a daily basis in terms of mining?
There was a day where I mined 1,200 coins, other days where 700, other days 1,100, some days 150. It was literally how long I left that laptop on for. The reason I was able to mine so many so quick was because I was one of the first people to mine Bitcoin. There was hardly anybody else on the network. There was Satoshi, there was Howells. I don't know who else was there. I mean, I've worked it out that I sent I think it was the 61st Bitcoin transaction that ever occurred on the network. It was a 400 Bitcoin transaction and it cost 0 fee, which is pretty much the reason why I fully support Bitcoin Cash now. If you want to go into those details
we could do.
I sent a 400 Bitcoin transaction back in 2009 and it cost me 0 fee. If I want to do the same thing today but only send $50, it costs me $5 to $10 in fees. In terms of technology, that's going backwards. However, on the Bitcoin Cash chain, I can send any amount of money for 1 cent. Now, this is the original Bitcoin that I used back in 2009.
Okay, so before we go full Roger Ver, I just want to ask a couple of questions because we'll get into Bitcoin Cash. Now, you did mention Satoshi there, and I think most people who are into the Bitcoin space are really interested to find out what are the theories, what's going on, where has he disappeared to? Do you have a theory in regards to why Satoshi Nakamoto has not been, available since 2012?
That's Satoshi's decision. If he wanted everybody to know who he was, I'm sure he would have produced Genesis block private keys by now. That's not for me to say. I mean, I do have an interesting story to tell on that front. Because I was one of the first 6 or 7 people to connect to the network, and I also know that Satoshi was mining at the same time. Whenever you connect to Bitcoin and you run the client, you automatically download a peers.dat file. Now, this peers.dat file contains an IP address of every other node that you've connected to. So my hard drive in a landfill in Newport not only contains over 7,500 Bitcoins, it also contains Satoshi's IP address.
So in theory, you could locate Satoshi if you found this drive?
I could locate his IP address.
Not IP version 6 yet, so not quite locate him, but that is interesting. Okay, so on that note then, let's talk about Bitcoin Cash, because you've got probably the greenest Twitter feed that I've ever seen, and green in Bitcoin Cash green, I mean. You're a massive Bitcoin Cash activist, and I find that quite surprising since I find it surprising, but I'm relatively new to Bitcoin in comparison to you. You've got a bit of a different view, as you've already touched on. You believe that Bitcoin Cash is closer to being the original Bitcoin than the current Bitcoin, and you haven't been paid off by Roger Ver, is that correct?
That is absolutely correct.
Okay, so tell us, you've given us one reason, the fees. Do you have any other reasons that push you towards using Bitcoin Cash as opposed to Bitcoin?
Yes. Basically, one of the quotes that Satoshi is quoted as saying is the transaction method, once version 0.1 was released, was set in stone for the rest of Bitcoin's lifetime. Now, the recent change to BTC with SegWit has amended that transaction process. It has gone directly against the creator's intention. Bitcoin Cash doesn't do that. It sticks to the original transaction method.
So is this to do with the signature?
It is, yes. SegWit removes the signature from the location where it's supposed to be and puts it somewhere else. It is a different way of processing a cryptocurrency. It is a different version. It is the fork. It is the alternative. The original method still remains within the Bitcoin Cash chain.
Okay, interesting. I think a lot of people who hold Bitcoin might have a different view, but it's good to hear from one of the original people actually saying, no, I haven't been paid off, and Bitcoin Cash is better, because it might change some perspectives. Now, you've got a really interesting device that you've begun to market. It's a mini point of sale device, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. And it's specific to the Bitcoin Cash chain.
Can you tell us a little bit about this device and how it works?
I've got a device with me here. Now, basically, this is a point of sale device which can be installed in any merchant, small merchant, convenience store, flower store, restaurant, and it allows the merchant to process Bitcoin Cash transactions within 10 seconds. Now, this is something that Satoshi actually said himself, that he expects a payment provider to be able to process transactions with a good enough checking within 10 seconds or less. I've created a solution for the Bitcoin Cash chain which does just that. Now, this solution is not available on the BTC chain. And the reason for that is the Bitcoin Core developers introduced something called RBF, which is replaced by fee. So if I were to send you a Bitcoin transaction and I paid a $1 transaction fee, I could then immediately come along straight afterwards and send the same transaction but include a $2 fee. This means the $2 fee will be included into the block before the $1 fee transaction, which will get invalidated. So for a zero-conf transaction where that could happen, this device would be useless. And that has been brought about by the changes the Bitcoin Core team made in 2014-15. Since Bitcoin Cash has launched or re-upgraded, should I say, in August, we've removed that from the code. It was not originally in Satoshi's Bitcoin code. What this does is it enables zero confirmation transactions. So I can send a transaction to you right now on the Bitcoin Cash chain. In order for me to invalidate that, I would need approximately a whole data center worth of mining power in order to invalidate the transaction or to fraudulently take back my money. It's not worth doing. Do you see what I mean? The resources required to commit the fraud make it not worth it. This allows zero-conf transactions to be accepted in store for small enough purchases. Now, if I was to buy a house, for example, I wouldn't use a zero-conf transaction because it's such a large payment. However, if I was going to buy a drink or a packet of crisps from my local convenience store, I'm happy to send a transaction, it to be a zero-conf transaction, and it will confirm once I've left the store. Now, what Mini POS does is once I've sent that transaction in to the merchant, Mini POS will check 3 separate blockchain explorers to ensure that that transaction is in the memory pool ready to be mined into a block. Now, according to Satoshi's words, that is good enough for small purchases.
So sort of a alternative to the layer 2 solution is that you're just literally waiting for the transaction to hit the mempool.
Yep.
And once it hits the mempool, it's good enough to say this is verified. We don't need it on the actual block. So even if it takes 10 minutes to hit the blockchain, that transaction would go through on your system.
And we know that it won't disappear from the mempool, and nobody will try to double spend it because it will cost them too much money for what they're trying to fraudulently recover back.
Okay, very interesting. Since we're on the topic then of talking about Bitcoin Cash, I think most people might be aware of the fact that the biggest change in Bitcoin Cash is that you've increased the block size. So you've made the blocks bigger, thus allowing more transactions in and to keep the fees low. But some people would argue that that's already being done by some alternative currencies, such as Litecoin and Dash. Do you have any views about those currencies and how they compete with Bitcoin Cash?
Litecoin is not really my thing. To be honest, I've never liked Litecoin. They cloned Bitcoin completely from day one. They changed a couple of parameters and pushed it out to the world as if, they were the next big thing. I don't appreciate that as an early Bitcoiner. I believe they're taking a lot of value away from the original Bitcoin and not providing a lot in return for it. I think a lot of ICOs and a lot of innovation that's happened today could all happen on the original Bitcoin blockchain.
So what's your thoughts on Ethereum then, on that note?
Ethereum isn't trying to be a cryptocurrency, it's a crypto asset. It's the oil of the crypto world. You can do many things with it. I actually like Ethereum. Ethereum was due to be built on the Bitcoin chain at first. It wasn't because the Bitcoin core developers deliberately made a change to stop Vitalik from doing that. Now, if you see the valuation of Ethereum right now, and you think all of that wealth could have been added on to the Bitcoin chain if they hadn't made this change, it makes me wonder if these guys have seriously got the best interests of Bitcoin at heart.
So you're basically saying that Bitcoin had the potential to have full decentralized applications built upon it, but it was restricted.
That's correct.
By developers. Interesting. Okay, I don't know how much time we've got, because should we open it up to the audience? Let's open it up to the audience now then. People who've got questions, perhaps for Mr. Howells, I'm sure.
Yeah, so we're told that we should make sure that we have passphrases for our wallets and keep those in a safe or on paper so that if you lose your hard disk drive, for example, at least you can recover your private keys. Did you not think about doing that at the time when you created the wallet?
Back in those days, there wasn't that functionality. There was no passcode, there was no recovery seeds. That has all been built into Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies since. Back in those days, there was literally the public and the private key. And I would say that the hard drive that I took out of my laptop was the backup. I kept that for 4 years as the backup. I knew my wallet file was on that hard drive. That's the reason I kept it. And it was just a simple case of misidentity, and the wrong hard drive was thrown out.
And just one final question. So to go through a landfill to find a very small hard disk drive, you seem to be quite confident that you'll be able to recover it. Is there any particular reason why?
mean, short of battery acid or a large magnet attaching itself to the outside of the hard drive, I'm pretty confident that the drive itself will be in decent condition. The disk inside will be able to be rebuilt. The data would be able to be recovered. With regards to actually finding it in the landfill, I don't have to search the entire site. Now, I know the date of the week that it was thrown away. And I've also spoken to the guys who run the landfill site. And if I give them that date, they know roughly, based on a grid reference system, where that bin was buried.
Perfect.
So we can estimate a depth and we can estimate a location. So in theory, it would just take me scrubbing away the top layer of the last 4 years of rubbish and then screen in a certain layer through a filtering device, which could be built quite easily. The problem I've got is that the local council, nobody wants to take responsibility for this, because it is a huge job. It's millions of pounds to build a landfill site. It's not just a hole in the ground. It's actually an ongoing engineering project. You've got all sorts of landfill fires to worry about, pollution into the environment, dangerous gases. And the feeling I get from the local council is nobody wants to take it on their shoulders to give me permission in case it goes wrong, and they have to take responsibility for it.
More than their job's worth. Yeah, we've all come across that with councils somewhere along the line.
Well, I thought once it got over 100 million, they would...
They might want 10% of that. They're pretty skint after all, aren't they?
At the moment, I'm hoping that Bitcoin continues, Bitcoin Cash. And I honestly see the value of that drive going up even further. And if, let's just say Bitcoin goes to 100,000, which is a 10 times increase, which in crypto world isn't that much.
Yes.
The value of the drive becomes worth $1 billion.
Yes. It might then be worth it to the council.
At that point, when I offer them 10%, they might change their mind.
One last question.
Are you sure your ex-girlfriend's not living on some paradise island somewhere in the South Pacific? Sure she didn't take it?
Yeah, I'm sure. I can see the coins on the...
What did you do after you realised it was gone, the hard drive was gone? Did you build something financial... business in crypto after that? Did you manage to recover? And obviously I'm not talking about the hard drive, just did you invest again in crypto?
Yeah, I'm still 100% Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Cryptos, I've obviously nothing to the level of before.
Yeah.
But I've done all right with myself. I still believe in Bitcoin, cryptos. I don't believe that I should get the coins back from the developers. I don't believe they should write something in the code to give it back to me, because that would break the whole point of Bitcoin in the first place.
Can I say that your story would make one of the best movies ever? If you go and search for your hard drive and find it, it would break box office records. It's a great story. It's a tragedy for yourself, but if the council relent and you manage to do it, it's one hell of a story. It's one of the best
I think one day they'll let me, but thank you very much.
Can I ask just a quick question?
Oh, go on then.
What would you do with the Bitcoin or the cash equivalent of the Bitcoin should you succeed in retrieving it? Just on a personal note, hypothetically, I'm curious.
What would you do if you won the Euro Millions?
Fair enough. I was just curious. I'm sure you've dreamed about it and
to be perfectly honest with you, I don't allow myself to think like that, because I probably would go crazy. Yeah. At the end of the day, I haven't lost anything. Yeah. I still have shoes on my feet. I still have the clothes on my back, and I still have a house. There's a lot of people in this world that don't have shoes on their feet.
Would you keep a large proportion of that within crypto?
If I found it tomorrow, I'd probably sell a few million to, keep me going. But 90%, 95% would stay in crypto, because over the long run, it's inevitable that Bitcoin goes up, cryptocurrencies go up. There's $81 trillion worth of wealth in this world, and there's only 21 million coins. Yeah. Now, I understand all the wealth is not going to go into one coin, but if it did, we'd be looking at a price of $4.8 million per coin right now.
Could I put in a petition to have all of the forked coins that you don't want? So like diamond and all those, those rubbish coins.
Bitcoin candy is yours.